listeners are always hungry for, how do I get started? How do I find my purpose? How do I dream, not just a regular small dream, but a big dream for my life? So can we maybe focus in on the purpose arena? And, how do you find your purpose? How do you recommend that people find their unique purpose?
Well, I get that question a lot. Some people come to me already having a clue. They have an inclination about their purpose and what it is they want to do. And then I started getting many clients, particularly those in their 30s and 40s and 50s. I call that the next generation, and younger, who come to me and say, I have a good job, and my relationship is stable, my family is stable, but I just feel like there's something else that I'm meant to do. And I need help in figuring out what that is. And I get a lot of people and people now working on vision boards and trying to visualize what it is they want to do. And there are a couple of things that come to my mind and a couple of things that we do. One, I love Simon Sinek's work, and Simon talks about working from the inside out and not the outside in, that as a society, we can always say what it is we want to do and how to do it. That's sort of coming from the outside, external, as opposed to from the inside, first asking ourselves this question: why did God create you? Why do you think you're here? And that's one question. And another question I ask people is, and this may sound a little weird, but I ask people, when you die and people are celebrating your life, they're celebrating your life, and you're in the room where they're having a big party, and they're talking about you, and you're sort of up above the room, floating up above the room. Just kind of imagine this big celebration. What is it you want people to say about you at your celebration? And people think about that. And when I thought about that question for myself, the things that I want people to say about me is how I want to live my life now. And the things that I want people to say about me, when I take it to the future, when I reflect on the future, I can then step away and say, if I want people to say that she was committed to helping people become the best version of themselves, that was what her purpose was, then I have to ask myself, if that's what I want people to say, how do I need to be for all of that to match? So when we're working with people around purpose, it really is what's in your heart. And many times we find our purpose back in our childhood. So people will tell me things that they're thinking about, and I'll ask them questions. What was it like when you were a child? Were you always curious because they want to be a researcher? And that's their big dream. I want to be a researcher. And so I ask about curiosity, and were they always curious? Or I want to be a great leader. For me, leadership sort of came in one obvious way. I was the oldest of my siblings. My mom died when I was 19. And, in some of my final discussions with her, it was all about helping Dad to raise the others. So the leadership thing, and I was a high school teacher, Gloria, early on in my career. And when I was a kid, I was always setting up a classroom at home and kind of forcing my siblings to be my students. Sometimes they do a walkout, but, but that leadership thing for me and developing others was with me when I was a child. So for so many of us, our purpose, who we wanted to be, that question when you're a child, who do you want to be when you grow up? Your purpose often is back there before we get all bogged down with responsibilities, and we forget that our imagination has power and that we can imagine things. And to your point about how do we get people to dream big, it is in the imagination. So when I can work with people and get them to relax and get comfortable with using their imagination, which is so powerful. Those are just some of the things, Gloria, the questions and powerful questions and looking at your childhood and reflecting on your future. So it's sort of a past and future sort of a process to help people determine what's their why, so to speak, what's their purpose. And it's a process. It doesn't happen easily, because we've all these other things going on, these habits, So anyway, that sort of is a little bit about how we do work with people around their purpose.
All right. Well, that sounds fascinating. And actually, you and I talked a little bit about this, very, very similar to the kind of work that I do. So I'm always learning. And so when people come to you, Lonnetta, and they say, well, I really want help. I'm ready for this. But, my friends, my family, they kind of not put me down, but they think that maybe I'm taking a risk. I'm putting myself out there, or maybe I don't have what it takes to do what it is I envision myself doing, what I dream about. So how do you handle that?
Well, as a coach, as a life coach and an executive coach, the power is in the questions, and the answer is with the individual. Now, the questions are really geared to look at things that are in our subconscious, things that are there that are a result of how we were raised, our environment, habits, and beliefs that we have. And if any of those beliefs need to be challenged, and experiences, Gloria. So, for example, one person had an awful experience of something that they really wanted to do, and they asked a group of people who they knew. And it's important in terms of who it is that you ask when you've got a big dream and you want to do something. And we usually ask people that we know and love because that's, as people say, that's the comfort zone.
Right.
But the people we know and love sometimes are afraid for you. They're afraid for you to take a risk. They're afraid that you'll fail. They're afraid that you'll be disappointed. So sometimes people don't mean to shoot your dream down. Sometimes they are doing it because they believe they're protecting you. So to get really clear about who you share your dream with is important. So that's one thing. The other thing is really getting clear around what do you believe about yourself. Do you believe that your dream will create this inspiring future for you, or do you believe that you need the approval of others for you to have what it is that you want? It's sort of this either-or sort of questioning in terms of what it is that you want to do. And do you believe? So a lot of this is around what do you believe about yourself? Do you believe that your life is your responsibility and that you and only God, because we don't control everything, and spirituality is a big part of me and who I am and the work that I do. So what is it that you believe about yourself, and is that based on, what is that based on? Is it based on what someone else told you, or is it based on what you truly believe about yourself? And when I ask people what they believe about themselves, that question often stumps people in terms of what they believe about themselves and where the belief came from. in many instances, the belief came from someone else. Someone else said, I'm great, but I don't believe it. Someone else said I couldn't do this, but I believe I can. So what do you believe about yourself? What are your values? And so it's in the questioning, and often the power of the question, the quality of the question, as you know, Gloria, results in the quality of the answer. So the question needs to be able to help people really look at their beliefs, what's in their heart, and begin to separate some of the habits and beliefs that they may have obtained. We all get values and beliefs when we're growing up. Different people influence and impact our lives. One example, I had this big dream to have my own company, and I was afraid to do it for various reasons. And when I got a coach myself, and they kept working with me around what was holding me back, which is one of the questions. What's keeping you, Lonnetta? What are you afraid of? And I talk about the things I was afraid of, but when we really got deeper into it, there was this belief and value that was instilled in me, Gloria, by my dad. And that belief served me well when it served me. But the belief was, and you probably have heard this when you were growing up, you don't leave a job, you particularly don't leave a good job until you have another job guaranteed. That was holding me in place. That value was with me. It's how I had operated, Gloria, my entire life. I've never been unemployed. I always, if I changed jobs, and I was always on a job for a long time, if I changed, it was a strategic, planful move that I didn't leave until the other one was lined up. Well, having your own business is not a guaranteed good job. And once I realized what that was all about, I had to then answer the question, well, Lonnetta, now that was the value then and that was the belief then, but what do you believe now? And so these beliefs and where they come from and our values, helping people to do what I call a values clarification. You've got these 10 or 15 values. They lay those out. And I ask, where did that value come from? And they'll put down in the next column where that came from. My mother, my father, an aunt, Sunday school teacher, college professor. So they put down where it came from. Then the very next column, the question is, do you believe that now, given your experiences in your life, which of these values do you agree with and which don't you? And people start Xing out some of the values. Many of them are still there, but it begins to get clear to them that I don't have to still do this because that's what it was. I have the power. What is it that I believe? And so it's a process that we have to go through.
Yeah, well, I love that you are really pulling out the pieces of the process, Lonnetta, because, a lot of people, like I said, they want something. They want their dream. They want to have clarity about their purpose, but they really don't understand that it takes work to dig down into their belief system, dig down into their subconscious, like you mentioned. And I love that you said it's in the power of the questions. So. And you had a coach. I mean, good coaches have a coach, right? Because we need to do some of the same kind of work. So when people come to you and they tell you, I know what I'm supposed to do, I've done this work, but I can't seem to get started. I'm just kind of procrastinating. They may not use that word, procrastinate, but they know that they're digging in their heels or dragging their heels, or they're just not, they don't have the generator, if you will, to get started or to keep going. How do you handle that?
Well, when I think about that, a couple of things come up, and many people that we work with, whether it's in a coaching relationship or in a training or workshop, a couple of things, Gloria, that I've come to learn. And part of this is that I continue to grow, so I can't work with people when you talk about what I knew yesterday, that was yesterday. If I'm